Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joe Pisapia, and today it's mock draft time. That's right, the Welsh is sick. I knew this was coming. I did a show with him on Monday. He was not 100% Welsh. He's going to get squeezed. He's going to come back, hopefully healthy, later in the week. He is day-to-day on the injured reserve for a little while, but Joe Orrico's here with us, and in the Conference of Joes, we decided, we need a big personality, a big-time guest in the world of fantasy baseball, and who better than Justin Mason to pinch hit for the Welsh today? Of course, if you don't know Justin Mason, then I question your choices in life. You can follow him on X, the Twitter machine, at Justin Mason FWFB. Of course, Fantasy Benefits is where he is living, Fangraphs, doing podcasts, TGFBI creator, Justin Mason. I missed your face. I love your hoodie. Look how great your setup is now. Look how it's evolved over the years. That's what I'm most impressed by. I got to be honest.
This is in a large part due to you, right? This is the exact same room that used to call the Mason Murder Mansion.
The murder shed. The murder mansion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That I have. I've put up walls, and I actually have things hanging up on them. So it's a painted wall. It's orange, which is bad at night because I look orange, but that was a mistake. But yeah, no, it's a beautiful room, in large part thanks to you.
Well, if I could shame anyone else into fixing their setup, I'm happy to do it. But it looks great, and the evolution of it is terrific. It looks very professional and exciting. And, as long as you don't start putting up emotional walls, Mason, that's all I want. Just no emotional walls, just the physical ones. Joe Orrico, you've been working your tail off, doing a million mock drafts. One trend that you've seen recently, just out of curiosity, have you seen some players start to really shoot up the board? Is Caminero that guy that's starting to really pop? Like, what's happening? Because and I know, spring training, a couple guys start getting some hits, and all of a sudden ADP starts to go bananas.
You literally nailed it, Joe. Like, I'm literally thinking, well, the first one that comes to mind is Junior Caminero. I did an ADP show yesterday that you guys may or may not have heard by this point with Jeff Erickson and Derek Van Riper, and we were talking about Caminero and Mark Vientos, and I forget which one of them said, but this isn't really that close in ADP anymore because Caminero is shooting up so much. He's going to be terrific. I know that sometimes players get hyped up in spring, and then they end up jumping up 3 rounds and then falling flat on their face, but this doesn't feel like one of those situations. Considering the ballpark, considering the skills, the team around him, Caminero might be a 3rd-round pick pretty soon, and it's maybe a little bit early, but it's really hard to argue with it.
Yeah, look, we're trying to draft teams that are what the ADP is going to look like in 2026. Remember, ADP is just polling. It's a suggestion. It's a consensus. Start to think about what next year's 1st and 2nd round look like, and that's the guys you should be targeting. And today we've got a different style draft. We're doing head-to-head, roto categories, and we could change it up a little bit. I was getting bored. We had too many BA. We'll do OBP today, so no batting average. We're going to do quality starts instead of wins because I'm a man of the people. That's what we're going to do today. It's 12 teams. We're going to have corner spots. We're going to have 2 mandatory RP spots. Then we're also going to have 4 outfielders, 1 util, and we're going to have the 7 pitcher spots. Just 3 bench today. We're going to, we don't want to take too much of Mason's time. He's got murders, after all, to commit later in the afternoon, and lime to purchase, and probably shovels and all the other things that go along. But seriously, the orange, I like it. I think it looks good. Anyway, let's kick things off here and let's see it where we're at. And of course, we're using Draft Wizard here for the mock draft today. Make sure you are using the cheat code to open up all of the fabulousness that is fantasy baseball, because you're a tool if you're not using the tools at Fantasy Pros. Download Draft Wizard today. Go to fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard and sync your leagues for free. Use the draft simulator. You can find mock drafts everywhere in our Discord, or just you can run them here with the robots too as well. But it's going to sync directly to your leagues, and you can use it in your real drafts as well. I am in the 4 spot. We've got Joe Orrico at 8. 12 teams, Mason at the turn. Of course he's at the turn. First, a couple of picks off the board. Bobby Witt, Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge. Oh no, it's an OBP league. Do I have to take Juan Soto? I guess I do. I guess I will. Okay, you twisted my arm. By the way, Mason, when Soto signed, did you have a little bit of the feels for me? Just out of curiosity.
I definitely felt good for my Mets friends, right? Like my Mets fans friends, like they have suffered for long enough, and it feels really good for them especially getting him from the Yankees, right? Like
Yeah.
the
Oh, that's the
crosstown
best
big
part.
brother, it feels like that moment when you're finally bigger than your big brother and you get to punch him in his face and he can't do
Yeah.
anything about it. So like, yeah, that I felt good for you guys.
Yeah, go and tell mom, you loser. That's right. I just took your toy from you. You nailed it. That is the cherry on top of the sundae for sure. But look, in OBP leagues and head-to-head leagues, obviously, Juan Soto, great player, but also, strategy-wise here, things might change a little bit because when you're looking head-to-head, I know for me, I'm looking for guys who do everything, right? I'm looking for those overall players as much as I can get them. Mason, for you, what's your strategy when you're doing the head-to-head categories too? I like to, instead of going for the specialists, the guys who do it all, and I value those guys a little more. Is there a certain strategy you like to employ?
I definitely like to employ a strategy of more balanced players, more balanced rosters. I think a lot of people want to take like the boomer bust guys in head to head leagues,
Mhm.
and that's how you lose weeks because guys go cold, and there's nothing worse than
Yeah.
like dominating your season, and then your guys go cold in the playoffs, and you get knocked out in the first round. So for
Yeah.
me, I like these guys who contribute to as many categories as possible, but also are pretty even week to week.
Yeah, it was tough for me to pass on Jose Ramirez here, but again, OBP, I've got to go with
Yeah.
Soto here. After Ramirez, Ellie De La Cruz, Gunnar Henderson, Joe Orrico, you took Kyle Tucker at 8. We'll let you go make your pick here. Mookie Betts at 9. Then we had the 10th pick, Corbin Carroll, Fernando Tatis. And then Mason, you took Lindor and Guerrero. That's a pretty nice start here. How do you feel about these two players going into 25?
Love them. I think they're both like top 10 players. It's getting them in the back end of the first round is great. I think this is a great year to draft at the back end. Getting that early second round pick, there's just some really elite players, especially in a 12 teamer.
Agreed. All right, Joe Orrico, let's talk about your picks here because after Vlad went Freeman, Skubal, Skeens, a couple pitchers, then you took Alvarez. So Tucker and Alvarez, I like that. You reunited these guys. That's very sweet. They must be very happy to play on your team together.
Yeah, I think the OBP, like Justin and I just talked last week about how we're both a little bit worried about Kyle Tucker, considering how bad Wrigley is for lefties. But OBP bumps it up a little bit. His OBP was over 400 last year, albeit he did miss some time. But I think the OBP format does boost up both him and Jordan Alvarez. As much as there are some reasons to be concerned about both, I think it's a pretty solid foundation as well.
Now, because it's head to head, I'm a little bit more willing if a big time pitcher makes it to me that I like to go ahead and pull the trigger on him. So after Alvarez goes Julio, Churio, Bryce Harper. I took Ketel Marte at 209. Again, line up the scores, a ton of runs. Love Marte there. Second base is not great, so feel pretty good about starting there. Then Zach Wheeler went. Now, Wheeler, Gilbert, and Sale were all on the board still when I took Marte. I was hoping one made it back to me. They did. So Wheeler went, Duran, then at the turn, Ronald Acuna to Team 1, Trey Turner at 301 pick, then Jazz Chisholm, Logan Gilbert. I wanted Gilbert. He didn't make it to me. Oh, well. I'll have to settle for Chris Sale. Question here at the 212, Mason, look, you're Mr. NFBC. You're, throwing money around in thousands of dollars on leagues and stuff. What is your risk management of Ronald Acuna this year? What's the magic ADP spot for you for him?
He's got to be fourth round for me to really want to take
Fourth,
it.
okay.
And like, you're just not going to have that happen, especially in the FBC world, right? Like, people are going to see that upside and go, hey, I want a Ronald Acuna because he can be the best player on a per plate appearance basis. The problem is in NFBC specifically, you don't have enough IL spots or you have 0 IL spots. So like,
right, yeah.
You're having to carry that on your bench. You don't know when he's going back. Even in leagues where you only have 1 or 2 IL spots, it's really difficult to roster because you're going to suffer other injuries. So for me, I would not be drafting Ronald Acuna at cost right now, but I understand why people chase that upside.
Okay. It's a good conversation. I think it's very helpful to everybody out there too, because the temptation of Acuna obviously is huge, off the charts. I think I would split the difference. I'd go fourth round. Orrico, where would you go for Acuna? I know you're on the clock. Can you walk and chew gum at the same time?
We'll see. I think Acuna for me is probably like a mid third round value, something along those lines,
Yeah.
depending on format. I wouldn't have any problem if somebody in an IL format wants to move him up a little higher than that, because then especially if it's like a 10-team league. My home league is 10-team head-to-head categories, and I'm going to target Acuna because there's IL there. The replacement level is so high. Even if I only get 4.5 months of him, I like that. But in leagues where you have limited or no IL spots, he's probably a mid-third for me, and I have no problem with Justin's fourth round valuation either. I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, I'm a little more fast and loose. I think I would go in the third round there for him. Especially the more shallow league, the more willing I am to do it. So 10 or 12 team, yeah. If we get to 14, that's when I'm a little more risk averse to him. Jackson Merrill goes at 305, then Kyle Schwarber, Austin Riley, Joe Orrico. You took Garrett Crochet at 308, and I'm glad I took Sale when I did because pitchers are flying right now. Let's talk about your selection of Garrett Crochet, the upside for him being the ace now of the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, I think he's pretty unimpeachable. The talent is just unbelievable. One of the shows we did. By the way, if you guys missed pitching week last week, we have all the pitching shows you need on the feed.
We
But
sure
Nick
do.
Pollock, we sure do.
All right, so George Kirby to you, Joe Orrico. How do you feel about that tandem of Crochet and Kirby as the front of your rotation?
I really, really like it. I think it's a great pairing. I'm going best player available a lot of the time in the early rounds, and I think the pairing makes sense. But I also think that Kirby just at the time was the best player on the board. But when I'm talking about pairing somebody who has the massive strikeout upside with the consistency that Kirby brings with a low whip, I really like that as a 1-2.
All right, after Kirby goes, you have Cole Reagans, Blake Snell, Jacob deGrom. I took Brent Rooker because I love me some Brent Rooker. I love the power. Really surprised how this draft is going for me. This is not what I thought I'd be doing here, but this is where the value's falling. Every draft is a snowflake. It's so perfect and unique on its own. Corey Seager goes next, O'Neill Cruz, Ozzy Albies, then Dylan Cease at the 501. 502, Wyatt Langford off the board, Jose Altuve at 503, and Langford's gone, which means I decided to reach for James Wood at 504 because he's got power, he's got speed, he's got batting average. He's got it all. I'm a big fan of James Wood. Let's talk about him for a second, Mason, because I think James Wood this time next year is going to be going probably in the late second round. Therefore, I think in the fifth round, he's a steal. Do you think I took him a little too early? ADP suggests maybe I did, but what does Justin Mason suggest?
I think you should throw ADP out the window and go get your guys.
There you go.
ADP is a collection of data points that includes the team that's going to finish last in the league as well as the team that's going to finish first, right?
That is the most Zen thing you've ever said, and you've said a lot of Zen things.
It's true, right? It's a collection of every member of a league, and the last place team is weighted the same as much as the first place team. Use it as a guide to know, like, especially the mid maxes, like, hey, how early would I need to go in order to get this guy, or how late could I potentially wait? But it's not really that useful from a drafting perspective, right? Because it's weighing a bunch of teams that are not going to cash in your league. So I don't think ADP is that useful. Have your own projections, have your own ranks, and go by that. Don't worry about ADP. If someone laughs at you, you can laugh at them at the end of the season.
All right. Now, was that just filibustering because you didn't like the James Wood pick?
No, actually, I like James Wood because I think for a young guy, I think he has a pretty safe floor, especially with the speed. I think his hit tool is still developing a little bit. I think the power is still developing a little bit, but progression isn't linear, and this could be a guy that really takes off. Like, I think he's a pretty safe guy, but with a massive upside. Very similar like Jackson Chourio was coming into last year.
Yeah, Chourio player I'm very high on this year, but not getting a lot of pieces. I got him in a draft the other day we did, though. I think one of the last drafts we did, I finally did snag a share there of him. All right, let's continue on with the draft board, see what it looks like here after I took Wood. Ozuna goes, Garrett Cole goes, Devin Williams goes, Mason Miller. All right, so closer time. Joe Orrico, when you have mandatory closer spots, it does force the hand a little bit more towards the relievers. I find that when I take relievers early, though, I'm missing out on a little offense or starting pitcher, and I feel like it's just not my move. So why Mason Miller now for you? I know he gives you, strikeouts. Obviously, he gives you a lot on the whip side, too. So let's talk about Mason Miller and what those builds look like when you start going reliever these kind of rounds.
For me, it's more so been the ugly builds that have turned out of the Luke Weaver specs and the Lucas Air segs earlier in draft season. I typically am more on your side there, that I like to shop a little bit later on. But I also like to have at least one guy that I know is not going to lose the job. One solid lockdown closer. And then for the second guy, then I can kind of shop in that little bit more variable range, I guess you could say, for guys that you're not 100% sure of. If it's a Carlos Estevez, if it's an Airseg, if it's maybe Justin Martinez or somebody like that. That's kind of the way I like to go about it. If I'm taking two guys from that range, then you risk one of them losing the job. There's players that could still get signed. I think we're probably at the point now where it's not as big of a risk, but David Robertson's still out there. David Robertson could sign as a closer potentially. And I'm not necessarily expecting it, but I just like to lock down at least one of them so that I just remove that fear and I can just say, okay, I'm getting 30 saves here regardless.
Zero miedo for Joe Orrico. That's no fear for those people who enjoy a little penta. That is CJ Abrams next at 509, then Bryce Miller at 510, Josh Hader at 511. Then you have Justin Mason at the turn, Teoscar Hernandez, Edwin Diaz. I know you're on the clock again. We'll come back to you here. Yamamoto at 602, then Diaz, Michael King, and then Joe Orrico. You stole Pablo López for me. How dare you? How dare you? He was my ideal number 2 guy. But now he's your 3. That's a pretty good looking pitching staff. Are you worried though? You've gone 1, 2, 3, 4 pitchers in a row so far, just Tucker and Alvarez. You think you can make up the difference here on offense?
I definitely can in a 12-teamer. At least I think I can. Pitching the way that it does eventually dry up, because I know that the common narrative right now is that pitching is very deep. Give it a couple weeks. It's not going to be as deep anymore. I want to lock down at least a couple of aces. And like I said, I'm kind of going best player available there. And I think that López, I wanted to go hitter. I really did want to take a hitter there. But I didn't want to force it when it didn't feel like that was the best time based on my valuation. So I went with my best player on the board, and that's Pablo López. As the SP3, I'm very happy there.
Now, Mason, at the turn here, you took Teoscar and Edwin Diaz. You went into the closer game as well. So are you somebody that has to come away, especially in a mandatory RP situation, with at least one guy that you feel really good about? Or are you willing to let the draft come to you?
I think a 12-team league, I'm more willing to let the draft come to me than I would be in a 15-team league. That being said, there's a limited amount of closers, and I don't want to deal with the guys who are going to be sharing roles or potentially losing their jobs. So I grab closers as early as I possibly can just to make sure I don't have to deal with that, because you're going to pay for saves one way. You're going to pay for them at the draft table, or you're going to pay for them in season, and rather just pay for them in the draft table and worrying about other things in season.
See, I'd rather spend all the fab chasing saves.
Yeah.
Sounds like an Adele song, I'm pretty sure. That might be one that's coming out on the new album, possibly. All right, so after Pablo López at 605, Framber Valdez off the board, Marcus Semien, Mark Vientos goes. I took Lawrence Butler. I'm feeling good about Lawrence Butler. Look at me. Look at me. 2 A's. What's the word? Oh, excuse me. Athletics. Pardon me. I gotta change my verbiage here. Butler, a guy that had a magnificent summer. I think he can build on it. Again, power, speed, everything there. Rutschman goes, then Helsley. Imanaga at the turn at 701. Willy Adames. Then you have Raisel Iglesias, Tyler Glasnow. I took Josh Naylor at 704. We were getting a little dry there at the corners, and I certainly needed one. So I'm going to ask you this, Mason. Willy Adames, really good player. Great season in Milwaukee. Now he's with your San Francisco Giants. Obviously, the ballpark factor is going to factor in a little bit to his ADP. Is Willie a steal here at this ADP, or is he still a little tenuous based on the change in ballpark factor from Milwaukee to San Fran?
It's not just a change of ballpark factor, but that is definitely playing into it. It's also just a much worse offensive team in a much worse offensive park, in a team that does not steal. Right? They were like bottom 5 in stolen bases as a team in 2024. I don't see that changing. Whereas Milwaukee's a top 5 team stolen bases, right? So I think all those things make Willy Adames worse in 2025. Now, I do think that the ADP is probably a little bit too harsh on Adames. People are downgrading that a little bit too far. And we see this all the time. We're seeing it with these A's players that you were just referencing, that we're seeing prices get out of control on some A's hitters and some Tampa Bay hitters because they're going to be in these minor league parks. You should always take advantage of the opposite of what the general public is doing. And so I think Adames represents one of the last guys at shortstop that I really want to roll with at that position. And so I'm okay waiting on him, but just know it's not going to be as pretty as it was in Milwaukee.
All right, let's continue on the draft board, see how things are flying here. I took Josh Naylor at 704, then Luis Robert at 705. I had so many outfielders, I decided to go with Naylor instead of Robert. Team 6, go ahead and take Christian Walker. Junior Caminero at 707. I was hoping I could wait one more round, but obviously I could not. So Brian Reynolds at 708 to Joe Orrico. That's a nice offensive player. It gives you a lot there. Brian Reynolds, very underrated, very underappreciated. Anthony Santander at 709. Brenton Doyle, Jordan Westberg, and then Justin Mason. You went and you took Matt McLean for me out of my queue, and then Logan Webb. Now, I am in on McLean. He looked good in the fall league, had some power there. So far, so good in spring. To me, it's just him getting at bats again, and with Spencer Steer being hurt, I think that also clears up a little space here potentially for an easier path for McLean. Let's talk about McLean and Webb, one of the most consistent guys, too, making 30 starts every year. But it was a rough end to the season. Any concerns with the end of the season for Webb, and what are your expectations for McLean?
Yeah, no real concerns. And I'm not a big Webb guy, but in a quality starts format, he's going to go deep into games, right? Like the Giants are going to let him get his 6. So, and there are other guys down below that I actually have rated higher than him that I know I can get in this next kind of next turn that I'm going to make here. So, usually, if you probably never see me draft Logan Webb, especially in an NFBC format, because I'm going to reach on the guys that I want that are going a little bit later in a FantasyPros mock draft or in an ESPN or Yahoo league or something like that. But just a stable force. McLean, I love. I was a little worried coming into draft season about the health, but he's healthy right now. He looks good in spring. He looked great in the Arizona Fall League, like you said. I think he could have a massive season.
All right, so possible massive season coming. I have a tricky decision on the board here right now. Is this the time where I try to take Mike Trout because he's still around? Do I dare do it to myself? Do I hate my life if I do that? Justin Mason, will I?
You might, but it's a 12-teamer, so and not very like deep benches, so like there's going to be a lot of room on the waiver wire to pick up guys for him when he eventually does get hurt. But in OBP league, like. It's still not per inning, basis or per plate appearance basis. Mike Trout is a stud still. So like,
see, that's how I think in the OBP. So you know what? Let's do it. Let's have some fun. We'll come back to that pick in just a second here. I want to run through the rest of these. After Webb, Nola, Grayson Rodriguez, Luis Castillo, Freddie Peralta goes next. Then Hunter Green, Tanner Bybee. I took Mike Trout. Salvador Perez goes next. And then Cal Raleigh, Hunter Brown, Joe Ryan, Max Fried, Cody Bellinger. Now, I passed because I thought I had some pitchers there that I still felt pretty good about, and I did, and his name is Shane McClanahan, so I'm going to go ahead and just go here with a pitcher that is normally an ace, normally a guy people would take as a 1. He's now my 2. Now, I've waited on pitching. We'll see how this works out here. Joe Orrico hit the pitching like a Justin Mason, in a murder shed. I feel like I'm like a Norm Macdonald mood today. Like, oh boy, this Justin Mason. He sure does murder starting pitching. Oh God, look at him. He's got a wagon.
Really, really upset at Team 9. I don't know who Team 9 is, but
meet me
in the parking lot, robot Team 9, who took Spencer.
Let's run through the Team 9 roster. For the people not watching on the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, get us to 25,000. That's what we're trying to do by opening day. Team 9, Mookie, Skeens, Rafael Devers, Alonso, Abrams, Michael King, Santander, Castillo, Schwellenbach. This could be the Jordan Mason robot for all we know. I mean, the Justin Mason robot.
I like their team. I'm not gonna lie. Like that's a pretty fun team right there, especially that pitching staff. But Schwellenbach, I have as a top 10 pitcher this year.
He is the 4th starter on Team
and
9,
he's their 4th starter this year. So like,
not so bad.
You have Schwellenbach in the top 10, Justin?
I do. And I'm about to take someone that I know Joe doesn't like right there. So
no, I like Bailey Ober. Is that
Joe was talking some mad trash on Twitter about Bailey Ober the other day.
And, Joe, wrong Joe. I was like, what do you mean? I like Bailey Ober. You got to specify your Joes here. It's very confusing for me.
Multiple Joes here. So I was hoping to get Schwellenbach and Ober right there. That was the gamble I took. I wish I now had taken Schwellenbach last round over Logan Webb. But then I'll go grab, like a Zach Gallen, who I just think is perpetually underrated each year.
Steal.
Bro,
that is such a steal right there. So McClanahan, Contreras, Steer, Volpe, Bregman goes to Orrico, Schwellenbach goes to Team 9, Felix Bautista, Kwan, then Mason took Ober and Zach Gallen. I can't agree with you more. I mean, Zach Gallen, absurd, I think, that he goes where he goes here. Tristan Costas at 10:02, Will Smith, Bo Bichette at Team 9, Joe Orrico right out from under you. That's got to be very upsetting. So how do you pivot here? Let's talk about Bregman and then this next pick you're going to make here now.
Yeah, Bregman, I really think that that's a good opportunity for him to still keep his fantasy value. I don't think that he's going to be quite what he was in Houston necessarily, but I think he can still be really valuable. Plus, he's likely going to be gaining multi-position eligibility. I'm still not sure how that whole thing's going to shake out, but he should get second base. And I'm going to take Juwan Duran here with my second of these two picks and just lock down that second reliever spot. I really think that Duran has the potential to give you close to 100 strikeouts. I don't want them to be playing any games with Griffin Jacks or anything like that. I hope it's just Duran. That's the question. But I think he can give me 30 saves with good ratios and probably 90 some odd strikeouts. So, and I also don't have to worry about relievers now. I don't have to worry about when Jeff Hoffman's going to go and when the Estevezes of the world. I can just focus on filling out the rest of my team at this point as well.
I'm developing a theme with my pitching staff here. Let's see if you can guess it. So after Duran goes, Riley Green, Royce Lewis, Andres Munoz, Matt Chapman. To me, I needed a corner guy here, so let's take the third baseman Chapman. Gave me 15 steals last year. Fingers crossed he can do the same. I'm definitely light on some stolen bases. We'll see if I can find some later. Sonny Gray, then Justin Steele went at 10-11. Roki Sasaki at 10-12. Robert Suarez at 11-01. 11-02, Jack Flaherty, then Vinny Pasquantino. I took Sandy Alcantara, so Alcantara, Shane McClanahan, two guys returning from Tommy John, but so far it seems like no problems, and I feel like I've got three aces here, Mason.
Is your theme for your pitching staff guys who won't make it through the season?
Yes, it is. Guys who won't make it for the season for 1,000. Why? Why won't they make it through the season? I mean, everybody's falling over themselves to draft Jacob deGrom, who hasn't thrown 100 innings since 2019, and Sandy Alcantara and Shane McClanahan are going rounds later. And one of those guys just won a Cy Young a couple of years ago.
I actually don't have necessarily a problem with the top of it with Chris Sale. I do worry about a guy like Shane McClanahan and a guy like Sandy Alcantara just because command and control are tricky. We saw it last year with Robbie Ray coming back from the Tommy John surgery, where like he came in his first start, he looked like vintage Robbie Ray, elite Robbie Ray, like was I think throwing 5 perfect innings before they pulled him out. And then the next start he comes in, he can't find the zone at all. And that's what happens with these guys coming back from Tommy John is they struggle with consistency in their command and control. I prefer McClanahan over Alcantara because Alcantara is one on a terrible team where he's not going to get wins. Now, this is a quality start league, so it's not as
well. He's on a terrible team for the first 3 months of the season. That's the caveat.
At least for the first 3 months of the season. I don't think they're going to trade him. The contract
I think you're wrong.
Too team friendly. And then he is a pitcher who relies on command and control. He's not an overpowering guy. And so I think for me, if I'm going to take a gamble on one of these guys, it's McClanahan over Alcantara.
Oh, 100%. I think your assessment's absolutely correct. There's no doubt about that. But I'm taking shots on these guys. I think the difference with Robbie Ray, too, is the amount of time of him coming back and maybe trying to push to come back at the end of the season. McClanahan's been gone a very long time. Alcantara's on the normal schedule of coming back. And I think also coming back in spring with everybody else and the hitters and the pitching coaches around you and all that, I think is a very different environment than rehabbing on your own and trying to come back late in the season. I think it's very different. They feel like they're on a normal getting ready kind of pace. And I think that does go a long way. Pitchers are creatures of habit. They are very strange birds, and to me, I think that is crucial for them mentally to feel like this is just a regular offseason. I'm preparing as normal. We're giving away a signed John Smoltz Braves jersey, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com. All you have to do to enter is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros MLB YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on this video or any video, and that's it. We'll be announcing the lucky winner right here on the channel, so make sure you turn on those notifications so you know when new videos are up and you can claim your prize. Also, don't forget, mark your calendars. Wednesday, March 12th, 3 p.m. Eastern, Fantasy Pros Fantasy Baseball Fest, a 4-hour live stream packed with busts, breakouts, and bold predictions to help you crush your competition. It'll be me, Welsh, Worm, Mike Mayer, all of our friends, and special guests like Chris Towers, Frank Stamfel, Eric Cross, Scott Pianowski, and more to break down the best sleepers, rookies, and a whole lot of fantasy baseball in between. So tune in live on Fantasy Pros MLB YouTube channel at youtube.com/fantasypros MLB to get the insight you need before draft day approaches. Okay, let's get back here to the draft after, where did we leave off? Sandy Alcantara. Ian Happ goes at 11:05. Jake Berger at 11:06. Ryan Walker, then Joe Orrico takes Randy Arozarena at 11:08. Christian Yelich at 11:09. Then Xavier Edwards, Adolis Garcia. Then Mason, you took Terang and Dylan Cruz. Love Dylan Cruz. Question for you about Terang. If the stolen bases drop off, say, from 50 to 36, is that a pick you end up hating?
For sure, but I don't think they're going to drop off. I actually think, if anything, they could even increase. Terang is a much better in-zone hitter than I think a lot of people give him credit for. He's a good defender, so I think he's going to be playing every single day. I think the batting average will bounce back, and I think those stolen bases are going to be fine. And this team right now needed stolen bases, so I kind of had to make this pick.
Had to make the pick, got forced into a corner. That's where he is right now. All right, let's continue on here with the draft board. Joe Orrico, when it comes back to you after Dylan Cruz, Tovar, Spencer Strider, Jared Jones, Jonathan India. So Rosarena and India. Let's discuss those two players and what you think about them in 2025.
Yeah, Rosarena. Well, both of them really get a nice bump from OBP. Both of their batting averages leave something to be desired, especially Rosarena last season. It was brutal. He batted 219, but he walked 11% of the time, so the on base is still there. Almost a guaranteed 2020. I did need a little bit more balance in those two categories with a Rosarena. And with Jonathan India, I think he's going to be leading off for Kansas City ahead of Bobby Witt Jr., ahead of Vinny P., ahead of Sal. So he should have the potential to score 100 runs while giving me probably a 340-ish on base percentage, and I really like that. I don't want to focus in too much on base percentage, but these guys are also very well-balanced assets that also just get a bump from their OBP.
Going back to Dylan Cruz real quick, I took James Wood. Mason took Dylan Cruz. Who do you prefer, Joe Orrico, at their current ADP in terms of return on investment?
Sorry, Dylan Cruz
and James Wood, the two Nats guys.
In terms of return on the investment,
yeah, in the ADP, like obviously Cruz goes later.
Cruz is probably a better bargain. Welsh and I talked about him yesterday. He could probably go like 15 and 30 if things break right. I think James Wood is really, really good, but he's a top 50 pick, and he's got a serious ground ball problem. Like, that's, I think, a legitimate problem. Can he fix it? Yeah. But his launch angle last year was like 2 degrees. He has enough raw power to mitigate that, but I also think that Cruz going 100 picks later, I think, is probably a bit of a safer play to return value.
All right. We'll see how the draft goes here. I am up on the clock. I don't love what I've got in front of me, so I'm going to make a pick here and continue on. So after India, Shane Langoliers goes, Luis Garcia goes, Kodai Senga, then I took Brian Wu. I was hoping Rodon would make it back to me, but he did not. Isaac Paredes goes next, another pick that I was hoping for. My queue got absolutely obliterated in these next couple picks here. Xander Bogaerts, Carlos Rodon at 12-12, then 13-01, Jason Dominguez, Pete Crow Armstrong, Urseg goes, and I took Seth Lugo, who had a phenomenal season last year. He was one of my breakout guys in the Fantasy Black Book last season. 181 strikeouts, a 3 ERA, a 109 whip. He threw 200 innings. I get it. Like, people say it came out of nowhere, but it didn't if you were paying attention to San Diego the year before. Mason, where are you at with Seth Lugo? I mean, at 13-04, it seems like a guy that isn't getting enough respect considering what he did last year. And it wasn't out of the blue because all the earmarks were there for a big season after 2024.
Yeah, it wasn't out of the blue. He's always been a very good pitcher. He just has vacillated between being a starter and a reliever and moved to a great park in Kansas City. I think he is one of those kind of safe glue guys that I like. In a 12-teamer, I don't know that I draft him very often because I just don't see the massive upside that you're looking for in those kind of leagues. He's kind of a guy you stream in and out of your lineup as opposed to someone you rely upon. But in a 15-teamer, I love him because it gives you that volume that is so king in 15-teamers. And I think he gets underrated, similar to like teammate Michael Wacha, who's just been a fantastic pitcher that nobody seems to talk about because he doesn't like have these huge strikeouts.
Right.
But the volume matters, and being in a good stadium like that can matter. And so, yeah, I definitely like Lugo more in a deeper league setting, but just generally speaking.
You know, it's funny. I mean, Lugo kind of started off the year a little lukewarm in terms of strikeouts, and then they started to really pop and come on. So it's just kind of interesting to see how that ended up just unfolding at a certain point. But again, I don't know what he needs to do to prove everything to everybody. And as let's see, where he's my 5th starter, I'll go to war with Seth Lugo as my 5th starter. This is a guy who was in the Cy Young conversation last year. So yeah. All right. I gotta eventually, I guess, take a closer here at some point. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe Pete Fairbanks can actually stay healthy for a season. We'll see. I've gotten some value picks. Thanks, Draft Wizard. Appreciate the thumbs up. I need that kind of encouragement. It's very important for me. So after Seth Lugo, Logan O'Hoppe, then Brandon Nimmo at 1306, Kerry Carpenter, Bryson Stott to Joe Orrico, Tanner Scott goes next, Nico Horner, Eugenio Suarez, Justin Mason. You took Muncy and Colton Cowser. Your thoughts on Cowser this year? And I also want to ask you about the Orioles too. if Kobe Mayo, Kjerstad, Holiday all push and perform, does Kauser get pushed? Does Westberg get pushed? How does that all work out?
I don't think either would necessarily get pushed. Kauser's a really, really good defender. And one of the reasons why he continues to play even when he does struggle, because he will go through kind of ups and downs, but he's got a lot of power. There's a little bit of speed. And he just plays such good defense that the Orioles are going to give him opportunities. I think if anybody gets pushed out of that outfield, it might be Cedric Mullins, my boy, which is sad from a personal standpoint because I've made a career on calling Cedric Mullins before anybody else. But I think Kauser's defense will definitely keep him in there. Westberg, I'm not as big of a fan of, but I think he will just accumulate. To me, like, he doesn't do anything spectacularly, so he needs that volume. And we did see him lose time last year to injuries. So I'm a little bit more scared about Westberg than I am about Kauser. And Westberg's going way too high for me, especially recently in drafts.
Yeah, see, Westberg's the guy that really scares me too, so I'm glad you kind of said that. Like, just a little bit concerned there. I am buying back in big time, though, on Jackson Holiday. So after the Kauser pick, we have Kevin Gossman, Jurickson Profar, Castellanos, and then Brandon Lau. So Stott and Lau, Orrico, let's discuss these two infield picks here back to back.
Yeah, early in the draft, I took nothing but pitchers and outfielders, kind of similarly to what we did on a mock maybe a few weeks ago, Joe, where I just packed up the outfield. So I needed to fill in some of these infielder positions, and I think I got a lot of values, like, Lau in the 14th, Stott in the 13th. I got Dansby Swanson in the 15th. It just feels like really solid picks, guys who are just overall contributors who aren't going to really hurt you anywhere, that are just really solid guys that are falling about a round past ADP, generally speaking. So it does change things because it's on base percentage, and it probably confuses people, but I think that these are all really solid picks. My on base percentage right now is projected to be second in the league behind some guy named Joe Pisapia, so I'll take that.
Well, Juan Soto equates for about 90% of that. So
yeah.
So I'm winning the OBP war. I'm behind on stolen bases. This is one of the great things too about Draft Wizard is you can look and see where the categories are. So if you're playing in roto formats, I mean, it's a dream, man. Obviously, I'm behind on saves too, so I've got to figure that out. But quality starts, again, right now, it's showing me at 13. It's showing Joe Orrico at 11. So for all those pitchers you took, you're still behind me, Joe Orrico. Do you feel like that's not being fair? Draft Wizard maybe not being fair with you?
Yeah, I have to talk to the devs. This is ridiculous.
We're going to have a long conversation. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter. Oh my goodness, shortstop has dried up, and I am not a happy boy right now because Carlos Correa is going to have to be a selection for me. Do I have to do that to myself? Oh, I hate life right now. I don't think I have much of a choice. But while I mull that decision, let's continue to look at the rest of the picks here. After Brandon Lau, Paul Goldschmidt, Alec Boehm, Trevor McGill, Luis Rengifo to me at second base. Then Mason Wynn goes next to shortstop. That's the guy that I really wanted to make it back. He did not. Very upset. I'm just getting crushed here at the turn with these three teams. Mason Wynn, Ronaldo Lopez, that's okay. He can go. JT Realmuto at 14-12. Then Jeff Hoffman to start 15-01. Yusei Kikuchi at 15-02. Josh Lowe at 15-03. Then I took Fairbanks. After that, Brandon Pfaadt, Stevenson, Jeremy Pena, nice value there. Dansby Swanson to Joe Orrico. Dansby, what do you think of the Cubs this year? I'm in on the Cubs, and I feel like Dansby needs to elevate a little bit because the rest of this team is getting better around him. Do you think that is going to help him kind of reach that next level?
I don't know that he's going to necessarily reach another level. I think he can probably do something like similar to what he did in 22 or 23, give you like low 20s homers, really good counting stats. Counting on him for some steals. The on-base percentage is nice because he walks close to 10% of the time. So even though the batting average is in the 240 range, the on-base should be in the 320. Hopefully he can get up to 330. So I just feels like a really balanced player. In terms of the Cubs overall, I think the Cubs offense is fantastic. Yeah. I think they're super deep. 1 through 8, Miguel Amaya, even I shouldn't slander Miguel Amaya. He's not too bad. The whole lineup really is very, very solid. Now, like I alluded to earlier, we talked about it last week, Justin and I, about how Wrigley is awful for left-handed hitters. So probably not the greatest news for Kyle Tucker, Michael Busch, Pete Crow Armstrong investors because they do take a little bit of a hit there. But I think this team is really, really underrated.
I do too. I think they're going to make a strong run for that division. I think they smell blood in the water. The Cardinals are weak. Pittsburgh doesn't have enough offense. Cincinnati's still trying to figure themselves out a little bit. But look, if Swanson can bounce back, we're in a good spot there. Certainly, he would be a huge contributor for that team. Kyle Finnegan goes next at 1509, then Christopher Sanchez, Ryan Mountcastle, Justin Mason, look at you, Robbie Ray, and Spencer Arrighetti, who that was another target of mine in this draft. Arrighetti, the first few starts of the year, terrible. The last 12, dominant. Which Spencer Arrighetti do you think we're going to get in 2025?
I don't know, but my team really needed strikeouts. So I was like, you know what? Let's go get some strikeouts here while I still can. And Arrighetti and Robbie Ray really fit the bill right there. So now I've got to figure out another guy who can go get some strikeouts. I'm going to go with Nick Lodolo, even though that stadium scares the crap out of me. But I need those strikeouts, and sometimes when you're playing these kind of leagues, you got to make a pick you don't necessarily want to, just because you can go and get a category that helps you.
Yeah, right. So after you took Arrighetti, Jackson Holiday goes at 1602, Yandy Diaz, Luis Gil, Ryan Pepio to Joe Orrico, Andres Jimenez, then Alexis Diaz, Arise. I ended up taking Correa begrudgingly. Correa goes to me, then Taylor Ward, Francisco Alvarez, who I am high on this year. I like the adjustments he's made in the offseason here with the bat being in a different position. Tommy Edman at the turn, 1701. Michael Tolia, 1702. Lane Thomas, Barrios, and then Nate Eovaldi to me at 1704. He was the biggest boost on the board, so I took him. Sean Manaea to team 5. Bednar, Jackson Jobe, and then Eflin. So Orrico, Pepio, and Eflin building some rotation depth. Eflin's not a guy that I'm in on. I think the Orioles are going to take a step back this year. Grayson Rodriguez, I love. I just feel like they had everything in their hands, and then it kind of fell apart at the end. You let Corbin Burns walk. You really didn't replace him. I don't know. The Orioles, I think, it's weird. I think they're in a retool, which sounds bizarre because they've got all these young players coming up, but I look at the pitching staff, and I'm just not impressed. What is intriguing to you about Zach Eflin? Sell me on Eflin this year.
Well, you don't think Charlie Morton is a good replacement?
When pitchers are as old as me, I get very concerned.
You're a very young man, Joe. You don't talk about yourself like that.
I don't look a day over 45. There you go.
So for Eflin, for me, the predictive nature of WHIP has become something that I've focused in on quite a bit. Previous season's WHIP for Eflin over the last 3 years, 112, 102, and 115. He gave you a 3.59 ERA last season. The strikeouts aren't quite what you're hoping for necessarily, but I already have a hell of a lot of strikeouts. I got Pablo López. I got Garrett Crochet. I don't need to really worry about strikeouts. He's more of a ratio booster for me. And Ryan Pepio, I just think he's going to be an ace. Like I think Eno pushed me over the edge last week.
Let's talk about that.
Pushed me over the edge last week.
What did Eno say in that show? For those people who might have missed it, you can go back and watch. We have the Ultimate Pitching Guide show with Eno, and then part 2 with myself and Nick Pollock, and then you had the ADP battles there. But for those people who might have missed that show, you can go back and watch on the YouTube. But tell me about, if you could, just real quick, what Eno was talking about Pepio.
So again, just not to focus on it, but the whip was really good at 115. He has 5 pitches that are at least average in terms of stuff. Grades out as a 107 overall stuff plus, which is really good. A stuff plus just got a bit of a facelift recently. I worry a little bit about the ballpark, and that could be something that holds him back to some degree. But I think he's talented enough to overcome some of the ballpark concerns. He's been fantastic throughout his career, albeit it's 43 games, 36 starts. But he has a 3.28 ERA, 113 WHIP to go along with some of the stuff numbers. The hard hit rate only at 37%. Eno will describe it a lot more eloquently if you want to go back and listen to that show.
Well, that's
but
true.
He, I think, is somebody that definitely has a chance to take that next step forward this season.
All right, let's continue on the next step of this draft here, because after you took Pepio and Eflin, Ceddanne Rafaela, then Neto, Pivetta, Justin Mason takes Jorge Soler, and as you mentioned, Nick Lodolo. Now, Lodolo is another one of my sleeper pitchers too, and I heard you were excited about taking him. So, Mason, to me, sometimes those lefties take a little bit longer in the pressure cooker, but also you've got a situation where the health just wasn't there. If the health is there, you've got some good leadership there now with Francona there. You've got a really exciting young team here. It looks like you're investing in the Reds from this draft that we're doing here.
I like the Reds, and so I did this series on TikTok earlier in the offseason where I went through every single team that I felt like could surprise and make the playoffs that didn't last year. And you know what I did? I covered every single team in the NL Central, because I think every team in the NL Central has an actual shot at winning this division, because the Brewers are taking a step back. The Cardinals are taking a step back. The Cubs got a little bit better, but not much better in the grand scheme of things. Like, the Reds are a really interesting team. They need health. This team cannot stay healthy, and they're already dealing with Spencer Steer's bum shoulder issue right now. But if Lodolo can stay healthy, I think he is an elite starter. I really, really like Nick Lodolo. But the problem has been staying on the field, on that mound. So in a league this size where I know there's going to be replacement value for starting pitchers on the wire, I'm totally fine taking a guy like Nick Lodolo. In a 15-teamer, maybe not.
No, that makes sense. It's a good sell job on Nick Lodolo, too. I like where your head's at. Tanner Houck goes next, then Luke Weaver at 1803, Shane Boz, Christopher Morel to Orrico, who's on the clock for his next pick, TJ Friedel, 1806, then Bradley Rasmussen. I took Zach Geloff because I needed somebody in the middle infield. It's an OBP league, so I don't care about his 211 batting average, and I'll just take the steals and a little bit of the pop. Kenley Jansen goes next, Ronel Blanco, then Tyler O'Neill, Josh Young at the turn at 1901, Gleyber Torres at 1902, Parker Meadows at 1903. I took Bowden Francis, another pitcher I'm very high on. Maybe the Blue Jays are one of those teams that could make the playoffs this year. Blue Jays, Athletics, I think very much in the mix this season. Yu Darvish goes next at 1905, then Ryan Weathers at 1906. Team 7, Mackenzie Gore, Joe Orrico, Clark Schmidt. Now that's a pitcher I think people are sleeping on. Pitches for a good team. Bullpen now has somebody solidified in the ninth inning role. If things break right for the Yankees, obviously the upside is 95 plus wins. And Clark Schmidt, I mean, as a quality start guy in league instead of a wins league, maybe we can have that discussion. But Schmidt's a guy that's, been waiting in the wings for a while now and had a good, solid season, kind of very under the radar last year. Let's talk about Clark Schmidt and this pick you just made.
Yeah, people kind of forget about Clark Schmidt because he missed a lot of the year with injuries, but over his 85 innings, he had a 2.85 ERA, 118 whip at 18% strikeout minus walk rate. He was very good. And now there was some concern throughout the offseason, kind of keeping the price down, I think, of is he going to have a rotation spot, blah, blah, blah. Between all the Marcus Stroman stuff, Luis Heel got shut down yesterday. It's going to be like 4 to 6 weeks for him. Clark Schmidt absolutely has a spot in this rotation. I think the skills are good enough for him to probably give me double-digit wins, go 150, 160 innings, hopefully. Because he went 160 innings in 2023, down to 85 last year. I'm kind of hoping he can just get back to that 150, 160 range, and I should be able to return a decent profit on him here. This at the point of the draft, post-pick 200, it feels too late for him.
Yeah, it does. Gabriel Moreno goes next, Michael Garcia, then Kirby Yates, J.J. Bleday to Justin Mason, another guy that had a good season last year, Austin Wells. So J.J. Bleday, a player that was in that Marlin system for a while, a player that I liked that took a lot of crap, basically, from a lot of scouts, I feel like, and I always thought was going to end up being a decent Major League player, and we started to see that version of him last year with the Athletics. I'm excited for this Athletics team. I'm excited for Rooker, Butler. I'm excited for them to go be playing in Sacramento and get out of that trash ballpark. What's the upside for Bleday in 2025, in your opinion?
I think the upside is pretty massive moving from the Oakland Coliseum to that park. And here's the thing. I think on a better team, Bleday would not be playing full-time. I think he'd be on the strong side of the platoon. He's not good against left-handed pitching. But on the A's, I think he may play every day. And while that may hurt the overall batting average, in an on-base percentage league, he walks at a double-digit rate. He's got power. He's going to be moving to a park that's going to be much better for power. Like, could he be like a 28 to 30 homer guy with a kind of a decent average, but a much better on base percentage? Yeah, I think he could. And like, this is a team that is getting better around him. So I really like Bleday as kind of a late outfielder that you kind of take a gamble on.
All right, looking for some late possibilities there. Let's move to the next couple picks here in this draft. We're almost at the tail end here. You have Walker Buehler going next at 2002, which also feels like a pretty good dart throw. Helio Ramos, Sean Murphy, Jesus Luzardo to Joe Orrico. If you didn't pull the trigger, I would. I know you're up right now. Jeffrey Springs up next. Then Mitch Keller, Castro. I took Brandon Woodruff at 2009. We're taking shots here if Woodruff works out. Nick Pollock just talked about it on the last show we did last week. If you missed it, go watch it, go listen. Why not take a shot on a guy who was looking like a front end starter? And again, more strikeouts from Brandon Woodruff. Gavin Williams, that was when I was going back and forth between those two guys. I ended up taking Woodruff because I'm sticking with the theme. Guys coming back from injury. What could go wrong? Starting pitchers. Nathaniel goes next. And then you have Nolan Arenado, Ranger Suarez at 2101. Alec Burleson, Reese Olson. I took my catcher finally. Colt Keith goes next. Then Michael Wacha, Cutter Crawford, Joe Orrico, Ivan Herrera. Luzardo and Herrera, your last two picks. Luzardo seems like nothing but upside at this ADP. The 20th round, you take a shot on a guy 2 years ago who had a terrific season. He's got more offense behind him. He's got a better defense around him. It feels like a no-brainer. And if it doesn't work out, you cut him.
Yeah, you and Welsh talked me into Jesus Luzardo. I had got it into my head for some reason he was a lot older than 27. I don't know why. I think he's just been around a long time.
He's been around a long time, yeah.
But I thought he was like 31 or something, and at that point I'd be a little bit less interested. But at his age, he didn't pitch a ton last year, just 66 innings. He's in a much better spot. No pressure on him as the number 5 starter in Philadelphia. I think it's a good bounce back opportunity. There's certainly, at this point of the draft, there are a few players with as much potential as Jesus Luzardo. Just a couple of years ago in 2023, he put up what was pretty close to a Cy Young worthy campaign. And he really looked like he was starting to break out over those couple of years until the injury bug got him. So I think it's a good point to buy back in here.
All right, so buying back in Luzardo again on the cheap makes sense to me. I definitely like it. All right, after you went ahead and did that, Ivan Herrera, Christian Encarnacion Strand, AJ Puck, Merrill Kelly, Kumar Rocker, Justin Mason, Max Scherzer. So 2 risky pitchers against late in the draft. We're taking shots here. You want to talk about innings concerns? I have them about Kumar Rocker. I think Rocker should be turned into a closer personally. I see a lot of Lee Smith in him, Mason. That's my evaluation of him when I watch him. He reminds me a lot of Lee Smith. It's just big fastball coming at you, intimidating presence on the mound. And Max Scherzer, I mean, what do you want to set the over-under? 17.5 starts? What do you want to take there?
I'd probably take the under there, but he looks healthy right now. Looks good in his first spring start. Kumar Rocker looked great in his first spring start. But these are guys at the back end of your roster that you're going to drop, that you're going to stream in and out. So take some upside, gamble, see if it works. If it doesn't, you move on really, really quickly.
Okay, so gambling time here. That's what we're doing in the draft. Cedric Mullins goes next, who you say is your guy, yet you passed on him. I'm just putting that out there. Tyler Fitzgerald, Jordan Romano. I was trying to snag him later, but it's okay. Francis qualifies at RP, so I'm just going to start him there. See what I did? I'm just going to play the waiver wire. That's what I'm going to do. Jock Peterson goes next to Joe Orrico, who's on the clock. Gurriel, Robles, Joey Ortiz. I took Cronenworth for a bench bat here. Brandon Donovan, Ryan Presley, Connor Wong to finish the 22nd round to begin the 23rd. Ben Joyce, Ryan McMahon, Justin Martinez. I took Clay Holmes, another shot here. I keep talking about him being like that conversion of Derek Lowe years ago, but I think Holmes has some more strikeout ability. Extreme ground ball pitcher. Mets have done a good job with Manaea. They did a good job with Severino. Maybe Clay Holmes is that next reclamation project. Reed Detmers, Brady Singer, another late pitcher that I really like. I think he's a solid bench starter, 2-start week guy. I like Brady Singer. Matt Shaw, and then Joe Orrico takes David Festa. So Peterson and Festa, 2 really good picks here. Festa, a guy, he might not start the year in the rotation, but I like what I saw from Festa. Those first 2 starts were a disaster. After that, things looked much better for him. So let's discuss him.
Yeah, I have been all in on David Festa. I think that there's a good chance he doesn't start in the rotation, like you said. I just don't think Simeon Woods Richardson and Chris Paddock should keep him out for very long. Paddock has been a disaster for a while. Simeon Woods Richardson, say that 10 times fast, was a bit of a troubling guy last season from a fantasy point of view. He was fine, but he's also not good enough that you'd want to start him in a lot of shallower leagues. I think Festa's talent is probably 3rd or 4th best on that staff. And I think that by the time we're talking about mid-May, he's going to be in that rotation, whether it's due to an injury, whether it's due to Paddock falling on his face. I think that Festa does have that job sooner than later.
The shade that Joe just threw without ever having to actually say Bailey Ober's name is insane, right? Because saying that David Festa is the 3rd or 4th best starter is pretty much just saying, oh, David Festa is better than Bailey Ober, which, don't get me wrong, I love David Festa. I think he should be in this rotation. I don't know that he's going to be like Joe mentioned. I think there's a chance that he starts the year in the minors because they're paying Chris Paddock, and for some reason they have a love affair with Simeon Woods Richardson. But Bailey Ober is still better than David Festa. Let's just stop with this nonsense.
He is better than David Festa. He's 4th. All right, I'm just spewing narratives at this point, but blame it on Eno. Eno got into my head last week about Bailey Ober. He was talking with Wells.
I love Eno.
Oh, I know.
Nobody loves Eno more than me. I partially owe my career in this industry to Eno Saris, but Eno is wrong on Bailey Ober. Eno is insane on Bailey Ober. I have Bailey Ober as a top 20 pitcher this year. No questions asked. You have to remember, if you take out that first start where he just was terrible, he was fantastic the rest of the way. Like, I think Bailey Ober's
He's one of my undervalued guys all year. And it's funny because you mentioned heel earlier, Joe, when you were talking about the Yankees stuff too. He's my number one fade this year. You know, it's funny how like some of these things are already starting to look like they're true, and we haven't even started the season already. You don't want to put too much into spring, but you know, sometimes, you know, these red flags are there for a reason, and the green flags are there for a reason to pay attention to. After Festa, Connor Norby, Nestor Cortez, Estevez, you took Springer and Hoskins at the end here, Mace. Saganu goes next, Caballero, Severino last round, Newt Bar, Bush, Grant Holmes, Bubba Chandler, Liam Hendricks to me. So hopefully he's a closer for the Red Sox. If not, I'll just pick up Chapman. All good. Chris Bassett, Eric Vetti, and Tario Estrada. Nice finish there. Nice last pick. So the winner of the draft was Team 2, but the best of the three of us was me, Joey P. Coming in at third, an 87, a B+. Not so bad. Kelly Kirby, the wonky penguin, liked my draft. I've been working so hard for Kelly and her to respect me for years now. So the fact that this happened makes me really excited. In fact, I'm going to screenshot this as I'm talking, and I'm going to send it to her in our Slack channel. So because I'm very excited about that. That just happened. Joe Orrico, number 5, Justin Mason, respectable at number 6. Here's my favorite part is that Team 9, the team that Justin Mason loved the most, finished dead last. Mason, what does that say about your evaluation process?
Oh no, they fell apart after I talked trash at that spot when they took Spencer Schwellenbach in the 9th round. They just completely fell apart. Bo Bichette, Christian Yelich, you know, a guy in Bichette who I don't even know what he is at this point. Christian Yelich's got a back issue. Tanner Scott, is he the closer? I don't know if he's the closer. Kyle Finnegan, like really, really shaky skills in the second half. Luis Gil is injured. Like they just completely bombed the second half of that draft. I got in Team 9's head. That is what happened
in this kitchen. Thumbs up for me. Look at this group. Scott Bogman, Andy Barron, Scott Pianowski, and Joe Pisapia like my draft. Who did not like my draft? Mike Mayer, who never likes me. So, I mean, it is what it is.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I like him. He doesn't like me. Whatever. I'm just kidding. I love Mike and I love each other. This is what we do on the program. All right, let's run through your team. Justin Mason, Austin Wells, Vlad Guerrero, Matt McClain, Lindor, Machado, Muncy, Bryce Terang. Then the outfield, Teoscar, Dylan Cruz, Cowser, Springer, Soler. The pitching staff, Logan Webb, Bailey Ober, the aforementioned many times. Zach Gallen, Robbie Ray, Spencer Arrighetti, Lodolo, Max Scherzer. And then you had Clase and Diaz. Boy, that's a pretty good tandem there. The relievers in a head-to-head format. Hoskins, Blade, and Kumar Rocker on the bench. Mason, this feels like a very Mason team. What do you feel like at the end of it all?
I'm not gonna lie. I hate this team. I don't think I did a very good job. I had a strategy coming in, and this is what happens when you don't look at your rules and realize that you have to draft starting pitchers. Because my plan going into the draft was I was going to let you guys draft all the starters. I was going to punt quality starts and strikeouts, and I was just going to load up anything else. And then about 7 rounds into the draft, I started to realize, oh no, there's actual starting pitcher slots I have to actually fill. And that just kind of changed the complete outlook of my team. I wouldn't have taken the 2 closers as early as I did. I would have prioritized at least an elite starting pitcher, which I didn't do in this draft. So, know your rules. Number 1 rule of fantasy.
In all fairness, though, you did come in late in the game here. You were pinch hitting for the Welsh, which we appreciate a great deal on the channel.
But this is what mock drafts are for, right?
This is what mock drafts are for. And if you didn't like this team, you could restart the whole thing. You could do it again. You could back out the picks, which is beautiful, and then continue to make the picks. That's why Draft Wizards
do this again. We'll do another hour mock draft.
I mean, I'm not after this meeting. I got at 1 o'clock. I got nothing else going on, so why not? Let's do that. Joe Orrico, let's run through your team real quick here as we look at the evaluation process and the expert opinions. Joe Orrico, Ivan Herrera, Brandon Lau, Stott, Swanson, Bregman, Morel, India. I got to be honest with you, Joe. This infield doesn't jump off the page to me. Outfield, Kyle Tucker, Alvarez, Reynolds, Suzuki, Rosarena, much better there. The pitching staff, impeccable. Crochet, Kirby, Lopez, Pepio, then Eflin, Schmidt, Lazardo, Mason Miller, Duran, then Nootbaar, Jock Peterson, Festa. So pitching is tremendous, Joe. You think if you had to do it again, maybe you would have hit a little bit more offense early on, considering how the starting pitching fell?
Yeah, with those Mason Miller and Pablo López picks, I probably should have gone something like maybe Teoscar Hernandez and something else, maybe Caminero or something. Like I did kind of ignore the infield a little bit too much. The offense is, especially if you look at the projections here, one of the best things about doing these drafts is that it updates in real time and shows you how you're projected. My pitching stats are all projected for the most part in the top 5, and then a lot of the hitting stats 10th, 11th, 7th. So I definitely left the offense a little bit too late, especially in the infield. But I think the pitching is strong. I don't have to worry about streaming pitching as much for this team. I can worry about using fab or waiver priority on some of those guys that pop in April on the offensive side. So I like the team overall. I think it would be a team I'd be happy to play out the season with.
All right, my team here, Jeffers a catcher, then Josh Naylor, Ketel Marte, Correa. I know. Matt Chapman, Rengifo, Zach Geloff, then Juan Soto, James Wood, Brent Rooker, Lawrence Butler, Mike Trout. This is if you're not first, your last team right here. I can tell you right now. I mean, Correa and Trout. What kind of death wish do I have with this squad? But it still has Juan Soto and James Wood on it, so I feel like I got some pieces here, and Marte as well. The pitching staff: Chris Sale, Shane McClanahan, Brian Wu, Sandy Alcantara, Seth Lugo, Eovaldi, Brandon Woodruff. Again, took some shots there. Fairbanks, Bowden Francis. I also got relievers in Clay Holmes and Hendricks. So my strategy here is just load up on starts with guys that qualify at RP, which is a fun way to dupe the system. I can punt saves, wait for saves, but again, if I've got that second RP spot that's mandatory, I don't have to have a reliever. It can be a starter who's also a reliever, and I can get my quality starts, more strikeouts, more innings there for those guys too. So different approaches here for all three of us. What's your favorite? Drop your comments below on the YouTube channel. Let us know who your favorite draft was. Was it Joe Orrico? Was it Joe Pisapia? Or was it Justin Mason? And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 25,000 before opening day. We can do it. I believe in you. Justin Mason, you're a mensch. I love you. You're the best. I appreciate you filling in early on West Coast time, nonetheless, for the Welsh. I know the Welsh appreciates it too. You're right. We should do this again. So we're going to be hitting you up. And who knows? Maybe this is your new morning thing, just hanging out and doing drafts with us. What do you think?
I would love to just hang out with you guys. You and Joe and Chris are some of my favorite people in the industry. I've been friends for a long time, and I miss hanging out with you guys.
Agreed. So let's just hang out more. Joe Orrico, thanks for putting everything together today for us, and of course, thanks everybody who watched and listened. Subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel wherever you get your podcasts as well, and make sure you ring that bell for notifications so you never miss a piece of content. There's so much going on here on the channel. All the ultimate guides, all the mock drafts to get you ready for fantasy baseball season. Subscribe today. Again, 25,000. That's what we want to get to. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Justin Mason and Joe Orrico, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Man, I need to